And to talk about all this and more, founder of WideAwakeNews.com, Charlie McGrath, is with me now. Welcome, Charlie. Nice to have you on again.
Thanks,
we
Liz.
have seen some aggressive pro-war rhetoric coming from the GOP candidates. Do you think it's necessary for Republican presidential candidates to prove how tough they are in order to gain voter approval, or what's going on there?
Well, it certainly seems that way. I mean, if we watch the national security debate, everybody up on that stage, with the exception of Ron Paul, talked about the aggressive prosecution of the war on terror. Some of them, Rick Perry, said that he's already called for a no-fly zone inside of Syria. So it seems to be this never-ending war is going to continue on until the next presidency, and it is the talking points that seem to be being put forward at every possible opportunity. And, it's completely and totally un-American. Your segment before there shows you how truly in trouble this nation is. I mean, we have these pop culture icons that we run for election time and time again, the same candidates regurgitated over and over again, and they have these same talking points. And it's all expanding Empire America and waging illegal wars. I think that's why Ron Paul is so successful right now inside of Iowa, because he's the only one up on that stage that is taking the Constitution into consideration before he opens his mouth.
Just want to talk to you about our correspondent we just played. She took to the streets and asked Americans, average Americans on the street, about some of the things that are going on abroad. And as we saw there, a lot of them didn't know what was happening. What's your reaction to that? To many Americans not really knowing, about these conflicts abroad.
We're living in this bubble, and this bubble that everything's going to stay the same and everything's going to be okay. We're going to continue with this high standard of living at the expense of oil from around the planet and labor from the Pacific Rim. What's unfortunate is a lot of these people are going to wake up. And it's not going to wake up because they're tuning into great alternative media like RT or other alternative media. They're going to wake up because the sledgehammer of reality is going to hit them. The fact that America is an empire in decline, this is going to hit them. This notion that you can just walk around and pretend everything's okay and not know what's going on, not know what's being done in your name. That's the frustrating part to people like me. They show pictures of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and people don't even know what country he's from. Well, we're ramping up the war machine to invade his nation next. It's absolutely terrifying that the average person on the street, at least the people that were interviewed in this in the RT piece there, had no clue what was going on. They only cared about their next consumer purchase, their next pop culture icon coming down the road. And we see that in our political system, where they keep giving us these pop culture legends they've become as potential candidates to be president. I think we're in a lot of trouble in this country, and the National Defense Authorization Act is the latest piece of legislation that the American people just have no clue about. All the mainstream media was harping on for 2 months was, are we going to have this tax cut with the payroll tax? This news, the payroll tax news, is meaningless. We get a 60-day break on a tax cut, big deal. The National Defense Authorization Act, your liberties are being usurped, America, right before your very eyes. It is truly time to wake up and see what's going on, because we're going from this soft tyranny that we've had since 2001 to the police state unleashing hard tyranny onto this country.
And why do you think that there is that focus, as you said, that this focus on the story that may not affect as many people on a large scale, but something like the Defense Authorization Act, which could have profound consequences, there doesn't seem to be as much interest in something like that. What is behind that?
Well, I think it's mainly because, the politicians in Washington, D.C. don't want to talk about the Defense Authorization Act. They wrap this thing up, this $600 billion bill, they wrap the wording in it, Section 1031, that it gives the government power to snatch American citizens off the street and hold them indefinitely because they, commit a belligerent act. This is the actual verbiage of this legislation. Why there is people talking about it. There's people like Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers who's, starting recall motions here in Montana to get Denny Rehberg, Max Baucus, get these guys recalled for voting for this unconstitutional legislation. But unfortunately, most people are just tied up with the pop culture media. watching whatever comes across the television and pretending that everything is going to be okay. When our freedoms, our liberty, our Constitution continues to be shredded almost every single day, and it's to the point now where it's not even talked about by the mainstream media. RT is the only one I heard talking about the National Defense Authorization Act. It's staggering to me that there's not more outrage over this.
Lastly, just want to ask you, we see that, and as you were just venting about, that a lot of Americans don't even know about these things that could have profound impacts on their daily lives and on the country and a national and global perspective. How does this play into voters' ability to elect a president?
Well, we don't really have a lot of choices, right? We have the finance juggernauts candidates, the people who can get the financing, from the Wall Street firms, from the big banks, the 1%. These are the ones who are financing the people before us. The people that are put before us, these pop culture candidates, none of these guys are going to talk about dismantling the security industrial complex because it brings in too much money. We've spent $1.2 trillion since 9/11 in homeland security. And in the idea that somebody's going to point to the Constitution other than Ron Paul, it's a pipe dream. So unfortunately, I get this from my radio program a lot. We deserve what we get. Well, you know what? We really don't. The best candidates are not always presented to us. It's the best funded candidates that are presented to us. But it is every American's, it's their duty to find out what is being done on their behalf, what's being done to them, and what's being done in their name. And I'm afraid, Liz, that time is rapidly running out. I mean, we're continuing to see this evaporation of liberty. And when you can have a piece of legislation slip through the Senate with a 97% or 97-3 vote for the NDAA, it is absolutely terrifying. This piece of legislation that will make it, this turns us into East Germany. I mean, it's like having the Stasi, the legislation that enabled the Stasi to go in, black bag somebody, and get rid of them just because they commit so-called belligerent acts. It's
Charlie,
terrifying.
Thank you so much for weighing in on that. That was founder of WideAwakeNews.com, Charlie McGrath.